Okay, we get started. Good afternoon, everybody. This is literally, well, almost a graveyard shift. So hopefully we can keep you entertained. We had to be a little bit agile. As you will see, there's one panel member that might be joining us a bit later. Thankfully, he's my boss, so yeah, I'm not the one that's late. He's running late, so, and he had to apologize to me. So we are going to have a bit of a discussion this afternoon around green skills and, how do we bring our people along on this transformation journey and the sustainability transformation journey. Now, I'm Lulu Krugel. I'm the head of sustainability at PwC for PwC Africa, and I'm joined by Lorraine de Villiers from the IDC. She's a strategist in corporate strategy and innovation, and Gugu McLaren Ushewakunze, head of economic inclusion from the NBI. Now, we did a bit of a survey as PwC amongst our clients just to ask them a couple of questions about how their workforce is experiencing sustainability and the sustainability journey, the sustainability strategies that they are implementing. Are they going along with the journey? Do they actually buy into it, etc.? And the reason why we did that is over the last year and a bit, as we've engaged with different clients and companies, one of the key factors that we found that drives either the success or the failure of what you're doing on the sustainability journey is whether you are bringing your whole workforce along on that journey. I think I'm preaching to the converted here, but what we very often see is that there's still a belief in some organizations that this is the problem of somebody else. Somebody else is dealing with this. Somebody else needs to take this into account. At the same time, we have a younger workforce that's coming into the job market, and they are looking for companies that they want to associate themselves with, that is really true to their purpose and actually living what they're saying to do, that they are going to do. So I will share some results of the survey as we go through the conversation, but that's not the key point. I'd really want us to discuss, our own experiences, Gugu and Lorraine, on this journey. Okay. So the first question that we asked was, how interconnected do you believe climate is with society regarding your company's sustainability agenda? And there's mixed feelings from respondents around the connection between these two. And I think, again, in a South African context, this is something that's extremely important, and I think also sometimes misunderstood. So I'm going to start with you, Gugu. Maybe if you can tell us a little bit, what is your experience around this interconnection between society and climate in South Africa? Do you think we've made the switch yet, or do people still believe that if we're doing something for the climate, it's going to come at a cost for society?
Thank you so much for the question and the invitation to be on the panel. It's really good to be here discussing this. So I think a couple of things. I think that the context that a lot of companies are operating in South Africa is one that is extremely complex and challenging. We have a myriad of social issues that are historical, that are structural, that are systemic. As one of the most unequal societies in the world, if not the most unequal society of the world, we have some very real, immediate issues. And these obviously relate to unemployment, they relate to poverty, etc. And that places a lot of pressure on companies to be thinking about, we have to respond. From an NBI perspective, we firmly believe that business cannot survive in a failing society. Businesses only thrive when society is sustainable, when it is equitable, and when we have dealt with those issues. So companies have to think through those social issues. However, We also know that these social issues will be exacerbated by climate change and by environmental issues. And we know that currently the pressures are coming from all sides. Energy, water are all adding these pressures on individuals and on companies. And so I think that there is a deepening understanding of the interconnectedness of these issues. I think that some elements are probably easier to deal with than others. I think we still grapple with how do we solve these social issues in particular. And from a company perspective, when it comes to environmental aspects, there is a better sense of what can be done. It's a somewhat clearer map to how do we deal with unemployment. Unemployment's a big thing. How do we deal with gender inequality? It's a big thing. And so it may look like, there's a disjuncture, but I also think that some things are quick wins and some things require a much longer process and require, a different approach. So I do think that there is this deeper sense of connectedness, but the approaches and the ability to do something, I think, is what probably hinders the progress that we want to see.
Yeah, it's such important points that you raise. I think I'm an economist by training, and I think, if I think back, and I might be giving away my age here, when I studied economics, it was always as if business was this entity separate from everything else. It was operating on this context instead of being part of it. And I believe that that's probably one of the biggest changes and shifts that I've seen over the last couple of years, is where there's this understanding from business. We're part of the ecosystem. We don't stand separate from it. We are a key player in solving some of the challenges that we are sitting with. And if, as you rightfully said, if you don't have a thriving society, you can't have thriving businesses combined with that. However, it is very tricky to figure out how do you get involved, and it can be really overwhelming. And how do you focus where your investment and time and money should go to have the most impact? I'm going to move on to the second question. So, the majority of respondents that we asked have agreed that their employers have a responsibility, or strongly agreed that their employers have a responsibility to address climate change. Now, I think one of the key things that we're seeing in the labor market is that people want different things. Young people in particular want different things from their employers. They are looking for an employer that really lives what they put out there in the market. Lorraine, do you want to give us some perspectives of what you are doing, what your experience has been regarding that?
Yes, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, at IDC, we don't necessarily add obvious green jobs to drive our sustainability agenda. What we want to do is we want all employees to develop a greener and more sustainable mindset. So we really want all jobs to become green in the different ways that they can. For example, if we look at procurement as a traditional job, there was never really a green skill as part of procurement. But now what we see is that most emissions, or the majority of emissions, are sitting in the supply chain. So we need our procurement people and our specialists there to develop a green skill. And we can say the same about other functions as well. I'm thinking, for example, our corporate treasury team. We are in the process of issuing a sustainability bond. Now they have to learn sustainability language, because it's a major part of the framework. They have to understand the indicators that we are using. They have to understand the metrics, and they have to start using the language. So it is actually every single job in the IDC that's impacted and that has to become green, not just the traditional green jobs like the sustainability manager or solar technicians. There is opportunity all around to become greener.
Yeah, I think my own personal experience has also been in PwC, to get people to understand, do what you need to do, but look through it through a sustainability lens. You know, if you're talking procurement, if you're talking our human capital teams, if you're talking people and change, if you're talking data and technology, every single area should be looking at what they're doing through that sustainability lens. And that's incredibly challenging because it scares people. You know, I think there's so much technical aspects, so much things that we feel, if we often look at some of the conversations that's taking place, that we often find the workforce saying, but, you know, I don't want to get involved in that, or that's not my area of specialization. So I think one of the key focus areas for us internally in PwC, and also where we engage with clients, is to really make sure that people understand what their role is in the sustainability strategy, to get it down to the absolute ground level. We were talking to a retail company recently as well, and they've gone through a process of really upskilling and training all their staff to help them to understand personally, this is what I can do when I get home, but this is also how I contribute to the sustainability strategy and what the company is planning to achieve. At the same time, I also think when we look at the job market, people are asking different questions, young people that come into the job market, and they want different things from their employers. They want them to walk the walk. Okay. So this is also an interesting one. You know, more than half of the respondents that we've asked said that either the employer is taking action but not doing enough, or is taking no action to address climate change. Now, I'm not going to disclose, you know, who the respondents is that we asked these questions to, but it's, again, incredibly interesting to see that, and I suppose a little bit worrying, that when you start, we've been saying for a long time that, you know, leadership in organizations, the boards of listed entities, etc., they should take the lead, they should take the initiative to actually drive this. And I think we've seen a lot of that over the last couple of years, where companies have really said, we're putting our money where our mouths are. We've seen KPIs of directors and boards being linked, and their performance being linked to what is happening in terms of the ESG strategy. But one of the things that we still see is that there seems to be a disconnect between what the workforce in the organizations are experiencing versus what the strategy says. We have this tool at PwC called the Aperture Survey, which we've used for strategy analysis for quite a couple of years, actually, where we ask companies, listen, if we're working with you on your strategy, do you mind if we share a couple of questions, first of all with your senior leadership, and then with the people in the organization to get their views in terms of the buy-in? And this was general strategy. Over the last couple of years, we've adapted that to look specifically at sustainability strategy. And it is still, sorry, Lorraine, it is still very interesting to see that similar to strategy often, or what is perceived as company, you know, strategy, a lot of employees will tell us, we don't really know what this is. So we spend a lot of time communicating to stakeholders, to shareholders, to everybody else in the market. We don't spend the same amount of time making sure that our employees are, you know, that they understand where we're going with this, and our customers as well. We don't necessarily spend the same amount of time to make sure that they are on, you know, linked in and on the same page. So, Gugu, what would be your suggestion or views to companies to say, how do we get this mismatch right between what we're saying in our strategy and what people are actually experiencing?
Sure, thank you. And not an easy question. I think that's at the crux of it, right?
Yeah.
The crux of it is how you're able to embed sustainability into your organization. And I think it's a couple of things. One, I think it's how we view sustainability when it comes to strategy. If it is seen as we've got the strategy, let's bring in sustainability, we're always going to fall short. It's always going to be outside of the core of what it is. You see in companies who have been able to think very deeply about how they are positioned in the ecosystem and what their role is, as you mentioned, that are able to, at the core of what they are and what the business is, shape their role and how they want to respond to that. And that speaks through their purpose. That speaks through their way of operating. And that filters through all the aspects of the business. It's felt internally by employees. It's seen in products and services. It's felt by suppliers because it is embedded in the actual core of the business. It's much easier to do that with a smaller or a new organization that can respond to that and move quicker and be agile. It's extremely difficult to do that for older companies. And you see many big corporates on this journey, and they've been on this journey for a long time because it takes time to shift and change to get to that point. So what you want is at the core to say you are responding to these broader issues. And it speaks to your point around then your skill pool opens up because we're all responding to and we're all delivering on the company strategy. And within that, there is sustainability. So as you talked through the different roles, if I'm an R&D, I need to be thinking about innovations to address social and environmental issues. Procurement, we mentioned. There's a whole range of skills that then start, all working towards the achievement of this strategy. And I think the trick we're missing and what you point to is the change management around it, right? So you've got a strategy, you've got a vision, but you've got to be able to take people along with you, right? So there's no point having a sustainability strategy and then every year you report on it. Employees don't read annual reports. It has to be taking people along with you. If I reflect on one of the things we tried when I was at Discovery before I joined NBI was we created the vision. And it looked, if you think about this tapestry and how it captures the story here, we tried that. And we said, this is what Discovery, the purpose is making people healthy and enhancing and protecting their lives. And this is what it actually looks like: access to healthcare, behavior change, etc. And that was all put into an image. And it was put up in one of the atriums. And there, the CEO spoke to it and said, this is the vision. This is what, as an organization, we want the world to look like because we were there. And those kind of processes are taking employees along with you. And then you start bringing it down into the business units, into the functions to say, in your space, this is what it means and this is what it looks like. And everybody is then understanding. So when you're a sustainability practitioner, if anyone has had the role and has had to go to all the business units and ask for data and ask for information, and they're like, who is this pesky woman who keeps once a year coming and asking for all this stuff and it's adding to my job and, Instead, it's actually part of my work. I know that I have to be doing this. As a facilities manager, I know how important it is that I'm choosing the correct light bulbs, that I'm looking at water-saving solutions, that I'm, thinking through how we make our buildings greener. And that is how you then start bringing employees along and getting them to contribute. So it's not a sustainability team, which is important, to coordinate, to make sure things are happening, but they cannot do the work. And so it's about how that filters down through to everyone. And that's when you start seeing companies who are innovative, who are leaders, is because you've got a whole engine working towards achieving these goals.
Lorraine, you want to add to that?
Yes, thanks. So at the IDC, we approach this from 3 different angles. We first of all look at changing the mindset. Then we look at establishing a skill set. And then finally, we provide a tool set. So if we have those 3 things in place, then it is easy for the workforce to come on the journey with us. So what do we mean by changing the mindset? So what we want there is for people to start thinking about their purpose and their value system. It is a process of thinking about my being, about my values. And it takes us back to the debate on corporate values, purpose-driven versus profit-driven values. So take a step back and start thinking, do we want to drive growth or do we want to change our mindset and drive values? So that kind of mindset needs to change. And how do we do that? We actually expose our employees constantly to sustainability talk. I like to refer to it as we speak sustainalese, not legalese, sustainalese. We speak it all the time, and we use terminology in every forum that we can, and we use the acronyms. And we invite our staff to jump into this alphabet soup of sustainability acronyms with us. They all know what is GRI, what is SDG, what is IFRS, because we constantly put it out there. What we've also done to create the right mindset is we've established forums. We've got a monthly sustainability forum. It's chaired by our COO, and there we invite across all the different departments and teams representatives, and we talk sustainability issues. We introduce and speak about policies, about systems, and about new developments. So everybody in the organization has the opportunity to attend this specific forum. There's also a quarterly forum similar to that one, but this is only for heads and executives, where we align strategically in terms of what are the latest developments and how are we going to take this through to our board and embed it in the IDC. So once we've got that mindset right, we move into the skill set. And at IDC, we've really opened up opportunities for studying and for training. We do not restrict people to training that's specific to their role only. If they want to do something in sustainability or explore a little bit wider, they are more than welcome, because we believe that these transferable skills are really important all the way around. So because you are, for example, an accounting specialist, doesn't mean you've got to attend training and studies in accounting for the rest of your life. You have the opportunity to look into other areas. You can go sustainability. So we've really opened up that door for our staff. They are welcome to attend any sustainability events, for example. We've also got internally, we also call it COP, but it's a mini COP. We call it a community of practice. So we have that very frequently, and whenever there's a new policy, for example, an update on our OHS policy, for example, we will have a community of practice event, and our staff will then have the opportunity to interrogate the policy and to know exactly what it is. Just finally, if I can have another minute to wrap up, on our tool set, the obvious one is the IT platforms and the importance of integrating all the different tools that we have, all the hundreds of spreadsheets that's everywhere in the company. We capture ESG data on, I don't know, so many ways, and the information comes in quantitatively, qualitatively, and we've got to report on those. So it's very important for the IDC to keep on investing in new systems that can pull all of this together and make it easy for people. People do not want to battle with that as well. We're already asking so much from them to gather the information. Now, what do they do with it? Where do they put it? How are they going to get hold of it again, that it makes sense to report? So we really have the responsibility to make it easy for the people in the company to gather information, to capture it, and to report.
I really like you said mindset, skill set, tool set, like that. Because I think sometimes we get stuck on the mindset bit, and then we think, okay, people must figure out the rest on their own, and we don't necessarily think about how would they do that, how do we empower them to do that. I think those of us that are in the room, that sustainability practitioners, what is important at this juncture, because I think a lot of us have been on this journey for a long time. This is nothing new, we must remember that it's new to a lot of other people in the organization to understand their roles and their responsibilities in this process. However, what I've found, and I personally make myself guilty of this, is that sometimes if people tell you these kinds of things, you take it very personally. It's oh, I'm failing at what I'm doing. I'm not doing this the right way. I think we just have to realize that's not what this message is telling us. It's giving us an opportunity to engage with people. And it's difficult. As I said, lots of us that are sustainability practitioners take it a little bit personal if we get this kind of feedback from the people in the organization. But I think what is required and demanded of organizations have changed so rapidly that we need to realize this is not criticism on the way that we've been doing things. It's just that we have a whole crowd of people that wants to join us in the journey, and we need to make them believe. Another point, Gugu, you mentioned earlier, strategy. And I actually get pretty upset when people talk about sustainability strategy separate of the business strategy. Because quite frankly, what we're seeing around us and that's happening at the moment is the biggest shift, in my opinion, that we will probably see in this generation in the business environment. So this is core to business strategy. This should be core to what we do, and our response should be the same as some other massive change that we've seen. Probably one of the bigger ones that I think that we as a generation might have seen is the importance that data plays. But this, I think, data is dwarfed by what we see happening in the sustainability space. Okay, so the next one. Okay, there we go. So respondents agree that certain key values and behaviors are important for enabling sustainability transformation. So we asked respondents to actually, give us some feedback around which behaviors are important if they look at ESG or sustainability transformation in the organization. Collaboration was one of the key ones. Equality, inclusion, innovation, openness, responsibility, and trust. I want to say that in most instances, for all of those, there's been a strongly agree or an agree. That just shows the complexity and how many things we need to manage in this space. So, Lorraine, if I can start with you, how do you see the role of collaboration in the ESG or sustainability space?
Yes, I think that to us is absolutely of utmost importance. To get that buy-in, you need to have collaboration with everybody. I can give you a couple of examples. We are in the final stages of updating our development scorecard. It's been a massive project, but we consulted broadly in the organization. In fact, we've had so many inter-team meetings, interdepartmental meetings. We brought it to sustainability working groups. And absolutely everybody had the opportunity to give input, whether they're sustainability experts or development impact experts or not. They would bring it home to what they are supposed to be doing. If they are working in operations and they are asked to, they're going to be changing the way they do a due diligence, for example, because we need this information in the development scorecard. What does it mean for me? How do you want me to do this? What kind of information? How am I going to get this information? So they made it really practical and asked questions that we as sustainability people did not necessarily think about. So it is very important to get that input and to get it up front very early in any process. And the same with any type of policy update, is to bring everybody on board early in the process. And the other one that you pointed out that I think it is quite important for us at the IDC is on innovation and new methods and new thinking, holistically thinking. Previously, when we mentioned something like innovation, it was more customer-centered and it was based on an individual being innovative. Now, when we speak about innovation, we talk about an ecosystem view. How does the company create value? And that is the mindset that we want to create, is that kind of innovation to change the whole value system and value addition of what we are doing.
Thank you. Gugu, can I ask you, on collaboration, we we actually did a survey at the beginning of this financial year, looking at what our CEOs of our clients globally are thinking around specifically ESG and how we're doing in the collaboration space. You know, how do we collaborate with competitors? How do we collaborate with government, etc.? A very interesting thing that came out of that was that as Africa, we did a fairly good job of collaborating with government and collaborating with each other, so with the competitors. But the one area where we fell short is collaboration with smaller enterprises, SMMEs, and how we bring them into this ecosystem. What is your experience, and what would you say to companies that's looking at that?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's important. I was going to add to the input that collaboration internally is important, but also the collaboration externally, right? So when we think about the role that companies can play in addressing social and environmental issues, the ability to partner and the ability to collaborate is absolutely key. So from an NBI perspective, the core of how we work is collective action. So the ability to, A, bring business closer to government, and B, to create a space where private sector can work together, can collaborate to achieve greater impact. And we've seen that it can be done. And so your reflections on that we're doing fairly well in that space, I think we certainly see it from an NBI perspective. We're very lucky to be working with committed companies who are willing to come around the table, willing to have conversations, and to really work towards that shared vision. And sometimes they ask for it. And I'll give one example before I respond directly to your question, is we do work around skills development and training for youth. And we're working with a few financial sector companies. And they said, well, why are we doing, one company's doing it here, and one company's doing it here, and then this one's doing it here. Can't we all just sit around the table and agree how we're going to approach it, and agree the best way of doing it so that we are achieving more impact? And with that, we had a collaborative approach where they were meeting their own objectives, but they were doing it in a way that was in partnership and was actually achieving a lot more. So we see a lot of that taking place. You talk about SMEs. I think that is a challenge. It's also a space that we're in terms of economic inclusion, and the work that we do with entrepreneurs and SMEs is certainly there is it's a massive challenge. And I think that where we see the block is, companies have various programs that they do around supporting entrepreneurs and SMEs through the enterprise development, etc. Where we have seen the real value is where companies are able to then integrate these SMEs into supply chain. So it's taking it a step further. And it is challenging. We have an example. We do work in KZN in partnership with TVET College and SAPI, as an example. And they started off as enterprise development support, but the whole intention of it was to say, we want to get these SMEs to a point where, as SAPI, you say, yes, we can bring them into our procurement and supply chain. And we're seeing it happen. And it is creating such sustainability. It is allowing SMEs to grow, to create jobs. And it is an ecosystem within the area where you are seeing the local development happening. And that is a collaboration between the TVET College, between business, between local community, with NBI facilitating, and the magic is clear. And what we want to see from an NBI perspective is more of this. And we're doing that through our IRM hubs. There's a nice infographic on the back wall that tells you all about it. I won't hijack this session for that. But at the core of it is around collaboration. And it is around where there are those tricky places that we struggle with, to find innovative ways of creating that connection and saying, what do we need to do for you to be comfortable to bring on SMEs? And let's make that happen, because that for us is key.
Yeah, we had a conversation this morning. It was the first session around carbon accounting. And, if you look at some of the requirements for Scope 3 emissions, And I'm very heartened to hear a lot of large companies, listed entities, etc., saying, I don't want to take an approach of saying, well, sorry, this is the rules that I have in place. This is what you need to play by, and I'm going to leave you to do that. We cannot do that. We have to bring companies along on the journey, and make sure that they actually meet the requirements and standards that that are placed on us, and we actually have to help them along on that journey. And I think, in particular, in the context of South Africa, the importance of job creation, of inclusion, etc., it's even more pertinent than what you find potentially in other markets. Dion, may I put you on the spot? Will you want to join us? Okay, thanks. So everybody that's here, Dion Shango is our PwC Africa senior lead or regional lead partner, and I think he got a taste of what traveling in Dubai means. From the one end, he was at another event earlier and getting here. So thank you so much for joining us, Dion. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
I'm so sorry I'm late, everybody.
No, that's perfectly okay. I say thankfully, my my boss is late, not me.
There you go. But any trip, any cab ride in Dubai takes half an hour.
Yeah,
Then
exactly.
you're doing well. That's before considering traffic. My
Exactly.
apologies.
No, thank you. Dion, we were just discussing, some of the values that employees view as important when they look at the sustainability and enabling the sustainability journey. We spend quite a bit of time on collaboration, but given the industry that we are in, can I ask your reflections maybe on trust? That's a very important one as well, where employees have said to us, this is really something that's very important for us to see from the organizations that we work with or work in.
100%, Lulu. And in our organization at PwC, and probably in the broader industry that we are in, professional services, so we are blessed with having a relatively young workforce. Yeah? So we employ graduates directly from universities, and many of them, including those who go on to leave our organizations later in their careers, their formative years as people who contribute to the economy are spent with us. So these are fairly savvy, bright, forward-thinking people. And if you just pay lip service to something such as sustainability or climate change, they see right through that so quickly, it's not even funny. So the whole concept of trust becomes super important. What you say and what you do need to be closely reconciled, if not exactly the same thing. So we like to think of ourselves as PwC as the very custodians of trust by virtue of the nature of services that we offer in the markets where we operate. Our brand is mostly associated with assurance or audit services. But in addition to that, the non-audit services that we render help our clients think through and actually resolve their most important problems. And so building trust and helping our clients and other stakeholders build trust themselves is incredibly important to the work that we do. That's trust on an external perspective when we look out. Internally, building trust with our own employees, our own people, is something that is integrally included and really integrated into our own strategy. And the type of experience we deliver to them and the type of values that we communicate that drive us as an organization need to be closely aligned with what is important to them. Gugu spoke about collaboration quite eloquently earlier, and they are wanting to see us collaborate with other actors in society. And they want to see where we invest our money in terms of contributing to sustainability overall. So in doing all of these things, these are various avenues that we have available to build trust and to demonstrate that what we say is actually translated into real actions, tangible, and we are able to show results in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it is so important and to be transparent as well, because I think we all understand, you know, that sometimes you can't get to the goals that you've set to yourself, but that transparency goes so hand in hand with the trust. And as you've said, I think not only in PwC but in general, the workforce that we are seeing, people entering the job market are so much more informed and have very, very clear ideas of what they're actually looking for.
And of course, the tricky thing about trust, as we all know, is that it takes you years and decades to build, and you can lose it all in an instant. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think linked to that is also, you know, lots of the conversations that have probably happened and that I've seen happening around greenwashing, rainbow washing, etc. You know, how important that is with building trust with future employees and then with the rest of society. Okay. Our second last one, there is work to be done to ensure that these values and behaviors form part of corporate culture. And that's quite interesting for me, is there's a bit of a, you know, distinction between male and female here, and you know, how people responded. So as women in organizations, there seems to be a view that there's a lot more to do to actually meet what we've said to ourselves are really important values to us and as a workforce as well. And the number one that comes up here is in terms of responsibility, taking responsibility and ownership in organizations to actually say, but, you know, I'm making this my own, and I'm willing to take responsibility for what is happening. Lorraine, if I can ask with you, or start with you, how do you ensure that that taking responsibility actually happens at the IDC, where people say, but I own this, this is mine, and I'm going to make sure that it works?
Yeah, Lulu, that is actually quite easy, because we cascade our targets down from corporate level to divisional to team and then to individual. So once a sustainability strategy and the corporate strategy is aligned and one as it should be, then it is easy for those targets and those objectives to find its way all the way down to the individual. And that is a way to make sure that it is recorded and this is your responsibility. But of course, we do not want to use the stick, we want to use the carrot. So we want to, in the first place, get the people's mindsets right, that they automatically want to do it without having to meet certain targets. And that brings me back to my first point, is just to create this awareness and excitement about sustainability issues, and to have everybody thinking the same way, so that it doesn't have to be something that is a target that I have to meet or else I will be penalized, but it is something that I really want to do and want to make a difference and bring my area of specialization and my core function in the IDC to marry that with sustainability and a green skill.
Gugu, if I can ask you, there's two that's interesting to me, the inclusion and equality. You know, where the relative share of responses from females to say that there's work to be done is quite high. And that's quite interesting. I think equality in particular, if you think about, this is for the whole of the continent, this is not just South Africa, but, you know, there seems to be a view that there's still a way for us to go before we get there. So what's your perspectives on that?
You've opened up Pandora's box. Once we start talking gender, you know, there's lots to talk about, and women in the workplace. I mean, it's not surprising to look at that and to see the experience of women versus men within the workplace. I think that there is definitely a lot of work that we still need to do. And I think it's for a number of reasons. One area, I think, in particular in South Africa, that we continue to struggle with is equity and diversity at a leadership level. And I think year on year, we get employment equity reports that come, and we see the lack of progress in terms of having more women representation at board level, at senior management level, top management level. And I think in particular, black women. So I think we need to look at it in a number of ways. So there's clearly something that we are still struggling with. And we know that having one woman on a board, one woman on EXCO is not going to change things, right? And I think the researchers, and I know that PwC does a lot of research in this space, is you need at least 30%. Of course, we would argue it should be 50%, but let's move along the journey to get to that point. And I think that's important, that leadership is reflective of the society we're in. It is clear from this research that women and women leaders very often have a different, have something to bring that is different. We see that there's other research that has come out. I won't name names in case they're your competitors, but that is very clear around women as leaders show more empathy, that teams that have women as a leader see more growth and development, that levels of engagement and productivity are higher. We see that from a financial performance, it is better. We see that when women are CEOs, businesses perform better and they're more responsible. So there's clearly a story backed by data that this reflects. But because there is this lack of diversity, I think that it points to some very real systemic issues within organizations that limit women's ability to progress. And I think they're very real elements that we need to think very carefully about when it comes to that. There are a number of inequalities and inequities that exist. The NBI has done work around the gender pay gap. And we know that this is a big issue globally. It is a big issue in South Africa. And the research suggests that women are paid anywhere from 20 to 30% less for doing similar work. It's significant, right? I think it's significant because, one, it's a fairness issue, but two, the role that women play in society, the impact of them not earning that 30% is felt in their families, in education, in nutrition, in social aspects. There are far-reaching consequences for those things. And I say that because the gender pay gap is actually something fixable, and it's something very tangible that companies can address, and the impact of that will be significant. We know that there are issues around parental leave. There are issues around flexible work. There's a whole host of innovations that happen that companies can very easily take on board to create an environment that is more equitable, to create an environment that does support women and men to be able to advance. And so I think that this is a critical aspect for companies to be thinking about. And also that the new generation is coming with very different framing and thinking. And so it requires a lot of work in understanding what that means and how you accommodate for this changing world and the changing requirements.
Sure, very powerful comments there and very, very important. I'm always, there's research that the UN has done, the World Economic Forum has done a couple of years ago, looking at how many generations will it take for the poorest South African households, well, they did it globally, but for the poorest South African households to reach median income. Does anybody want to hazard a guess? How many generations do you think in South Africa currently? 3, 9 generations. And there's a couple of key aspects that could move the needle on our ability to get there faster. Education being one of the key ones, healthcare, greater levels of income equality. So this is a way in which I believe that organizations can actually influence that. PwC has also started to look at this. How do we enable our employees to actually be the change makers in their own family structures where they operate, etc. How do we get them to move up this ladder quicker? But I was actually horrified by that. Just thinking through that, 9 generations. If you think 9 generations back, yeah, don't even. We're talking probably van Riebeeck or before then. So, but that is what we need to deal with. Okay, then the last one. Lead by example was ranked first by respondents as the most important leadership behavior to drive ESG and sustainability at an employee level. So what this is telling us is, again, we've spent a bit of time already looking at KPIs, at cascading the responsibilities down to the rest of the organization. But again, it just emphasizes the importance of creating the correct culture in organizations and to actually lead by example from the top. Dion, do you want to share some of your experiences there? How, first of all, we as PwC are doing it, and also, how we are advising our clients.
Yeah. So a very interesting response, this one. And it really brings home the fact that as leaders, people are watching us all of the time. And that can sometimes be quite scary, even when you don't know people are watching you. And so how we behave all of the time becomes really, really critical. This may sound quite simplified or basic, but something as little as me carrying a reusable container when going to a meeting from which to drink water. Somebody 2 or 3 levels below you looks at that and takes note of that. For me, it's seemingly nothing. But small little acts like that by leaders, being able to tangibly demonstrate what you are doing differently as your way of demonstrating a greater awareness to sustainability, become really, really important. As you know, we have our own net zero commitments at PwC, like many other organizations in the country. The data is showing us, thankfully, that we are progressing well against our Scope 2 and Scope 3 emissions goals that we set a couple of years ago. Following 2 years of a pandemic, 3 years, 2021 and most of 22, we have seen our emissions from business travel go back up. And so we have a challenge on our hands to demonstrate to our people as to how we respond to that. What do we change behaviorally to keep that type of behavior and those type of emissions in check? So a lot of education, a lot of awareness campaigns to our leaders, to our partners, to our people, of the many different things we need to do if we are to make a dent against the net zero commitments or goals that we've set ourselves. So it's about leadership, but it's about accountability as well, Lulu, how we measure ourselves and what the consequences are if we get it right or if we don't reach a particular target.
Thank you so much. We have 2 minutes left, so I just maybe wanted to open the floor to the audience. Any experiences do you want to share, questions that you have for the panel, maybe things that you're doing in your organization that you think is working very well, or maybe things that you think we need to change. So yeah, how do we take people along on this journey? Any comments or questions from the floor?
So I'm particularly interested in today's topic because we spoke about corporate strategy and we spoke about sustainability strategies, but I think that the one thing that can hold both these strategies together is the communication strategy. So it almost feels that corporates are saying that they're doing one thing, but internally the comms is not reaching the employees. And externally, it's not reaching your desired market. And I work a lot with, I'm in comms, So I work a lot with brands that sell products and not necessarily services. And as part of the marketing and comms team, the sustainability comms team sits in different forums, in different rooms. We don't communicate. So often communicators are either tasked to communicate what, the sustainability projects, and they sit within corporate comms, and then there's the marketing leg of communications. And those two departments, even though they're seemingly two teams, don't speak to each other. So what your consumer and other various stakeholders, what they get to learn about the services and the products that you provide is different to the sustainability team's work. And you take those findings and that comms and you give it to, various, whether you're lobbying or whatever, that's the comms that you take when you're, to politicians, to various business stakeholders, but it never actually reaches our consumers, and it never reaches the people internally. And I think the bridge for me will always be, or part of it, will be what comms can do internally as well as externally. It's great and well that we are funding or we're collaborating with different organizations and we're supporting different projects across Africa. But if no one knows about the good that we're doing, then we can't lobby support. We can't drive impact in a way that is scalable. It'll always just be a report that we send to our partners to say, look at the good that we've done, and no one else will know. So not really a question, but more of a comment.
No, I think extremely valuable. I think communication is key to success. And I think oh no, it hasn't been switched off, but I think it's a, it's a message for us to add over to the next team. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.